Chairperson. I think the only argument we see from side opposition is a loose principle argument that the criminal justice system should only be applicable to those who directly commit crimes. It is very unfortunate that they didn't contend to all practical arguments on how things like increase in rehabilitation, the amount of people who would commit crimes again is going to decrease, and that overall criminal justice system is going to improve. Two clashes in today's debate. Firstly, on the accountability of parents and the concept of retribution. Secondly, on prevention of crimes and rehabilitation. First point, on the accountability of parents. A couple of issues coming from side opposition. One, they talked about how children are uncontrollable by parents in terms of like the environment or those kind of things. A few responses to that. Firstly, we already told you that the government can pre-assume that parents in the status quo have a huge impact on the decision-making processes of children. We told you that the personality of the children, the identity of the children are created by the parents. That's why we give parents things like parental rights, but we also give them responsibilities, even the civil fault. Even if they're not responsible for the fact that a child broke something at school, parents still have to pay, right? I don't think that is a consistent argument that can be applicable in their side of the house. But secondly, they talked about how other sorts of environments are responsible for the children's making decisions. And that's why they're okay with having a rehab-based system, but not okay with punishing the parents. A couple of responses to that as well. We contend to the fact that there's a lot of sorts of environments that can impact the child's life. But note that parents are the only key actor that can determine what kind of environment in which the children are going to be put into. They can determine what kind of schools they go to. They can determine what kind of television network that they see. They can determine when they come home, what kind of food they eat, so on. I think then they are completely ignoring the fact that parents have a huge impact, more than any other sort of environment in comparison to what they said. But secondly, we also think that there's a lot of issues where just simply saying that the parents should be independently criminally reliable, an alternative given by DLO, is simply not realistic, right? We think things like having a gun unlocked in your home, knowing that your kid is having anger management issues is very irresponsible as a parent, but you cannot say that it is criminally reliable. You cannot ban specific instances or specific actions, because I think it's logistically impossible for the government to decide what is criminal and what is not criminal. That is why we're giving the judgment to the parents themselves, where they can reflect and they can hear what the media is saying, they can hear the voices of the victims, they can reflect their own sort of parenting, and they can decide for themselves whether or not they should take responsibility. That is a unique benefit coming from our side of the house. We also told you that victims are going to be happier in our side of the house. Inconsistency coming from side opposition was that in the first speaker's argument, they talked about how the victims are going to be sad because the accountability is going to decrease. If they think that the victims are the core actor in the criminal justice system, then their argumentation of supporting the juvenile law or being okay with just a rehab system doesn't stand. We also told you that we think victims are more likely to be happier in our side of the house when they know that the core actor who led them to be becoming victims, the core actor who educated the children into becoming who they are, is actually taking responsibility, willingly taking responsibility, and being apologetic and willing to change the environment in which the child was raised in. I think this is a key issue that they have not contended to. I think the emotions of victims and their ability to face closure and being able to move on to their life is extremely huge impact within the CJS. We think they needed to contend to that. But yes.
Even the moment that they go into the prison, they do not regret it. Through the process of rehabilitation, they realize that we do that wrong thing. So that they are responsible. We forcibly put on jail.
Yeah, you can have rehabilitation and this system too. It is not mutually exclusive, right? You can have the pre-existing rehabilitation system, but we think it is going to be a better alternative to have a more holistic system where parents are involved so that children don't feel isolated. Children do not feel that they are completely accountable, where the second offenses is more likely to decrease. So moving on to my second point on preventing crime and why this is a better form of rehabilitation. I think there is a very minimal engagement from their side of the house as to why why their side is better at rehabilitation. I think the alternative is the defending the status quo, I don't think that is working right now. Why is that? We told you that in the status quo, children within rehabilitation centers feel isolated, right? They don't have connections to society. They feel like their parents abandoned them. You oftentimes come from households who are poor, do not have a good relationship with their parents. What happens on our side of the house is that they know that your parent is caring about you to the extent to which your action is causing them to willingly take responsibility in order for you to be able to get out of prison earlier, or for them to actively take responsibility. We think the impact of this is extremely positive in terms of rehabilitation. Firstly, they can recognize that them committing crimes not only has a negative impact on themselves, who oftentimes don't have a lot of self-esteem or confidence, so that it might not be a strong enough deterrence for them to not commit crimes, but when your parents are actually suffering from your own actions, I think that is a much stronger deterrence for things like not opting into drugs, for example, right? When there's when you can think that your action is going to hurt somebody that you love, I think that is a huge impact in terms of deterrence, but especially in terms of second offenses, our motion is very, very impactful. We think when you know that your action actually hurts somebody, and when your parents are actually willing to take responsibility and work with you in terms of rehabilitation. We told you that things like utilizing resources like NGOs or rehab centers, or things like taking counseling is much more likely to happen when parents and children can work together as a unit in order to aim for rehabilitation. I think at the end of the day, the comparison is this. In our side of the house, even if you take all of their principled arguments, at least we can better the system of rehabilitation. At least we can prevent new criminals from happening. We told you the mechanism for deterrences. We think this impact in and of itself is enough for us to win today's debate. But secondly, on a principle level, we already gave you a lot of mechanisms, a lot of details in which parents are actually reliable. We already told you that parents have the right to respond to social criticism. We talked about parental rights. None of those things are adequately engaged by side opposition. We don't think their principle is enough to oppose this motion, therefore very proud to propose.
Thank you for your speech. Now I call